Welcome back to another Awareness to Action Enneagram podcast. My name is Creek, and I'm with my Saturn and co-hosts, María, Sikora, and María José Munita. Today, we're talking about sixes, but first, let's talk about the word for today. Any guesses?
Oh, man, I should know this one.
Can you repeat the word?
Yeah, I should know that one.
It has to do with, like, how you look at things. Like, no? Like,
Kinda.
Well, like...
Well, at least the first one is born under.
I was going to say Saturn ate his son, right? So there was one of his children. Okay, so so there's something dark to it, I'm sure. By the way, I took my son to the Prado when he was about 8 or 9 years old. And that was his favorite painting of Saturn eating his. Was he eating his son or his father? I can't remember now. Anyway, boring story. All right, so let's move on then. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the word Saturnine is either born under or influenced astrologically by the planet Saturn, or cold and steady in mood, slow to act or change, of gloomy or surly disposition.
Yeah, gloomy and surly. Yeah, so because Saturn was, right? I mean, he was he knew. No, so the son slayed him. That was it. He ate one son, and then the other one slayed him because he was concerned about being eaten. And so Saturn had been prophesied to that his son would kill him, so he was surly and slow-moving, etc.
I mean, that sounds like a pretty dangerous and concerning way to live your life.
It does.
So speaking of striving to feel secure, let's talk about sixes.
Oh, man.
Were you prepared?
No,
for
I was not. But I set it up perfectly.
Okay, good.
Yes. So Mario, tell us about striving to feel secure.
Yeah. So that's how we talk about Type 6. The preferred strategy is striving to feel secure. This is what fundamentally motivates sixes, right? It's this, I need to be safe. I need consistency. I need stability. I need to know, that things are as I think they are rather than as they fear they might be, as I fear they might be. There's a lot of talk about sixes being loyal. Some people call them the loyalist or the whatever kind of loyalist. I think that's a huge misunderstanding. That always actually kind of irritates me because I find sixes to be no more loyal or less loyal than any other Enneagram type. And whatever, loyalty there is usually in service of this striving to feel secure. I think there are a lot of misunderstandings about sixes, and a lot of that has to do with the Enneagram world being filled with a very specific population of people, right? I think this permeates all the descriptions, is that you get descriptions of the kind of people who go to self-help workshops, right? And so the sixes who go to self-help workshops are more likely to look a certain way, and sixes outside of that environment may be a bit different, So there is an issue around fear, but not all sixes are the Chicken Little, skies falling, Woody Allen-esque sort of characters. We encounter a lot of sixes who are very assertive, very confident, very successful people. You see a lot of sixes, in senior levels in organizations. So, but the thing they all have in common is this tendency to look for what could go wrong and what can I do to make sure that it doesn't.
Yeah, and most times, or a lot of times, that's a good thing. It helps. It's just that under stress, they just get too fixated on it. And it's not all they see, but it looks like it is, or that they look too pessimistic. But it is a helpful thing to have around or to do for yourself.
As I've been reflecting back on these podcasts that we've done on coaching the different types, I've been becoming more and more aware of this issue of population selection, right? The people that María José and I work with tend to be a generally different population than the people that a lot of Enneagram teachers might work with in, kind of more self-help, environments. And it also means that what we tend to focus on is a bit more narrow, right? Because, rarely the sixes that we're working with are dealing with big anxiety issues or huge self-doubt issues or that sort of thing, because they wouldn't be in the places they are if they had debilitating anxiety or tremendous lack of self-confidence or something. So we start to see very specific things over and over again that might not be the same that other kinds of coaches might encounter. And Maria Jose hit on one there that's, important about that pessimism. So I think because that's such a big thing in the people that I work with, Maria Jose, I'd be curious to hear more about that from you.
Yeah, it's the people that I also work with and the people I have around me. I've learned to listen to it with a different filter because I understand where they're coming from. But most people see the pattern of looking for danger or looking for risks as pessimism. And it kind of is, because it's a biased attention towards what could go wrong, which is a bit more pessimistic than a bias towards what could go right, but yeah, and what you said about the anxiety and all of that. So I think that what you mentioned there is like kind of the extreme, but we don't want to give the impression that there's no anxiety underneath. So it doesn't look like there is sometimes, but when you talk to people, even at high levels in the organization, and you talk about how they deal with kind of anticipation of things that can happen, and there is anxiety. There is this kind of future orientation towards risks that keeps them awake many times. Now, it's not debilitating. It's not it doesn't always mean that they don't have self-confidence, but there's this pattern of anticipating risks and trying to mitigate.
What I was trying to get across is that if I'm working with a six, there's a good chance that I'm not going to be saying, okay, let's talk about your anxieties now, right? Kind of thing, right? It's more the attitudes that might come from that low simmering anxiety, or just the strategy. Look, if you're striving to feel secure, that means you're just going to be more apt to notice the things that will risk your security. And that's the threats, the dangers, why things are going to fail, and so forth. And to Maria Jose's point, very often the places where our clients who are sixes run into trouble is that they point those things out, right? They can be scanning the horizon and they can see 7 good things, 7 reasons why this could work, and 1 reason why it won't, and that'll be the thing that they talk about. Right. And so what happens is everybody keeps hearing them talk about the one thing, but never really mentioning the 7 positive things. So people just assume, well, they don't even notice the good stuff. And the sixes will often say, well, yeah, I do notice the good stuff. I just, that goes without saying, right? And that'd be kind of the attitude, is they assume that everybody knows that they see it. So they run into kind of a branding issue, right? Because the things that people hear you talk about is the things they assume you're always thinking about. And part of the work that we do as sixes very often is just, point out the silver lining sometimes. I know you see it. I know you see the opportunities. I know you see the reasons why this might work. Just vocalize them more. Yeah. And not only does it get them leaning toward that opportunity, but also mitigates the perspective that other people have of them as being negative.
And there's also the perception. They come across like they don't want to pursue certain projects or tasks or ideas. when all they want is to make sure that everybody understands what the risks are. But people read it as they don't want to go that way.
I do resonate with the fixation on the negative. It's like, why would I need to look at the good stuff? Because what the issue is the bad stuff. Like, it's like what we say on here all the time is like, sure, it may sound like we're just constantly being negative about each type, but it's just like, well, if it's working, then we don't need to talk about it. But, if you're only ever bringing up issues, then it gets a little grating after a while, I suppose.
Yeah.
And you could cope with it. But I think what I just said, like coming across like I don't want to pursue that, makes people feel frustrated about it. Because it looks like they're negative, not only showing risks, but it's like almost saying, let's not go that way.
It's also, you make an interesting point there, Creek. So a couple of things, right? Number one, I always tell people that I am a coach, not a cheerleader, right? I'm not here to tell you how awesome you're doing. I do on occasion, but anybody can tell somebody how awesome they are. It's my job.
But happy to hear when people have something to say about you.
I've been
right?
waiting on that occasion for me.
Well, no, I'm sure I've said nice things. But see, I'm here to help you, Creek. I'm not here to, no.
I'm not here to fluff me up. Go ahead.
Right. So, so there's that element of it. Okay, so. But the other piece of that is, to your point, there are other profiles that can be pretty negative as well, right? Fours are not known as being the sunny, people, and ones, have a tendency to, but I see this, for example, I've been noticing this a lot in some preserving nines that I interact with as well, this tendency to kind of point out, that won't work because of, but so there are a lot of people of different profiles that will focus on the negative, but there is kind of a different tone to it that sixes have, right? It's, the why they're noticing it is different. Okay. And usually for the six, the reason they're noticing it is because there's some danger associated with it. The preserving nines I'm thinking of in my head are thinking more negative because they don't want to act, right? They just kind of want to cocoon, and so they point out to all the headaches out there to deal with. So I'll just stay here on the sofa. It's easier, or, whatever. So again, you always have to look at what is underneath the behavior, right? What strategy does this seem to be satisfying?
Wouldn't you say that for sixes, the difference between the subtypes, especially with the transmitting six, makes it not a different type, but there are additional elements that need to be considered when it's a transmitting six, because it's almost counterintuitive, but it's still a six.
Yeah. So this brings up a couple of things, Maria. José. Number one, we were talking the other day about, even doing these podcasts on coaching the different types. It's almost like you're doing a disservice by not focusing on the subtypes because they are so fundamentally different. Within all the types, I think the one that everybody notices is the six, because there's this language, there's this well-established language, and always has been, of the counterphobic six, right? Which, and the thinking was there are these two kinds of sixes, one phobic, one counterphobic. Again, that's really a superficial distinction, and it's a tricky distinction because it's not binary by any stretch, right? Every six is on sort of a continuum of phobic versus counterphobic or aggressive. And really what people are describing there is the transmitting six, right? So that's the character that usually, people are usually thinking of when they're talking about a counterphobic six. And it's a very different character from a preserving 6, for example. It's almost, I used to, like to not mess with people, but I used to like to make this point by saying that both Woody Allen and Steven Seagal are 6s. Right. And particularly when Steven Seagal hadn't gone full blown insane, like he is now, and he was still kind of viewed as this big, tough action hero character. People were like, well, how can that be the case? Right. Well, it can be the case because one's a transmitting 6 and one plays at least a preserving 6. So.
Yeah. And at work, they seem a lot more assertive and aggressive and a lot more self-confident if you don't look kind of underneath. They just give a totally different impression, or very different impression from how they are feeling inside. And it's interesting how difficult it is for them to understand why that's the case. Why do people perceive them that way when they feel so different?
And again, the point is you look at what's underneath the surface, right? And even in these, characters that seem aggressive and bold and forceful, there's that undercurrent of anxiety and concern about what could go wrong. I was just in Cincinnati, and I was in a car on the way from my client's location to the airport, and the driver was clearly a transmitting 6, right? It was about a 25-minute drive, and he talked the whole time, right? It was a really nice guy, retired firefighter, and we were talking about that. But he's covered in tattoos. He's you could tell he worked out. He was a former firefighter. You look at him, and this is a tough guy, right? But I could just tell he was a 6, right? I mean, you just had this, everything was about the dangers out there and guarding against the dangers out there. So it's the same motivation, it's just applied in a different way.
Guarding, but not avoiding altogether.
Absolutely. No.
In your coaching practice, I imagine those that make it into higher level leadership positions, would you say they're more, on average, more transmitting, or would you say there's one of the different subtypes would be more likely up there? Or maybe it's just an even split.
Do you have thoughts on that, María José?
No, I'm just speculating. But for some reason, I would say less preserving. But
I think it's very context driven, right? I think, and this is, again, one of the challenges that people have is we make these assumptions about what leadership is and forget how context driven leadership is, right? How a style of leadership works in one environment and will fail miserably in another environment because the needs and the expectations and the reactions of people will be different. So I think it's really, really context driven. I think, for example, in a financial institution or an insurance company or something like that, there are industries that will reward more preserving behaviors, right? So it's, probably the preserving 6 might have a little bit of advantage. One of the things we see in transmitters is, even though they're often very inspirational and expressive and inspiring, they can be a bit reckless in the risks that they take. And in a lot of environments, they're going to flame out really quickly, or they're just going to get frustrated that, this organization, this industry doesn't move fast enough for me, so I'm out. Now, you can go to another environment. I think, again, the military, police departments, fire departments are packed with 6s, and I think probably disproportionately transmitting 6s in those sort of environments. So I think it really is context driven.
And I don't want to get us too far in the weeds of subtypes. Sounds like we need to do another 27 episodes.
We have another series.
At least.
There you go. It's
but what I'm hearing,
just when you thought you were out, they pull you back in. They pull you back in.
We'll find things to talk about.
By the way, I just want to say though, for those of you who may not have gotten that reference, that is from Godfather 3. Al Pacino, you're just when I thought I was out, they pull me back in. And you can find out other movie tidbits in the Enneagram in a Movie podcast, which is part of the Awareness to Action podcast network.
That's true. Alongside of Thinking Well and Why, which is a new podcast that me, myself, and Mario and Lee Fields are doing together. So, yes. What I was hearing is...
back to the show,
But folks. Back to the show. What I'm hearing is it's maybe less it's about the subtype and more about how their relationship and how they leverage the connecting points. So how do you see, man, I'm nailing these transitions. Someone's got to hype me up. Mario's just going to critique me. So,
come on.
So let's, Maria Jose, can you talk to us about the connecting points and how you see people leverage those?
Sure. So the connecting points for type 6, the support strategy is point 3, striving to feel outstanding. So they are productive, they can be dependable, they like to accomplish things, they like to finish their tasks. So they are very kind of action-oriented in that way. But it's not for the sake of feeling outstanding. They want other people to know that they're fulfilling their jobs, that they're doing what they're expected to do, that they're responsible, but they will have sometimes this entrenched attitude that we call needy boasting. So I'm going to tell you what I'm doing, what I have accomplished, because I want to make sure that you know and that I'm valued by the group. So that makes me feel more secure because you know that I've been doing what I'm expected to do. Now, from the outside, people see that as they just want to stand out. But the reason why they do it is to feel secure.
Yeah, I just want to comment on that needy boasting thing, and we always want to be careful that they do. We all do both connecting points in positive ways and negative ways, right? So there are 6s who tap into that striving to feel outstanding in very positive ways and are achievement-oriented in very healthy ways and ambitious and so forth. But again, if we get back to our thing about being coaches, not cheerleaders, great, you're doing great. Go ahead, okay? But it's important to understand that because again, we can fall into these mistypings and misunderstandings like, wow, that person's really achieving things. They can't be a 6, right? So we want to understand that 6s can do 3, striving to feel outstanding in positive ways. But I remember, Maria Jose, I don't know if you remember this, but we were doing a session at a conference it was somewhere in Europe. I can't remember now. Might have been Denmark, and we were talking about these contradictions and entrenched attitudes, and we were talking about this very one. And there were 2 women Enneagram teachers there who were both 3s and said, "Oh, I never see 6s doing that. We don't think that's the case at all." And then there were 2 or 3 6s in the room who kind of raised their hand and said, "Yeah, I do that all the time." And then, and it's but you might not see it if you don't know to look for it. Okay. And this is why understanding these dynamics are so important. This entrenched attitude, this contradiction, that we'll talk about in a moment, are so important to understand because if you're not aware of the dynamic, you'll miss it.
Yeah. It's like if you don't have the distinction, you will not see it. Or you might not see it. But when you do, it's like you have a better map and it allows you to see things. More accurately. So the neglected strategy is striving to feel peaceful at point 9. So they want to feel peaceful. They try to cover all the bases so that they can finally feel that peace. And they kind of are able to relax at times, but then sometimes they don't. And they just feel like if they relax, they'll bring down their guard and bad things could happen. So it's like I need to be alert at all times because if I relax, if I rest, something will come and bad things will happen.
You can see this weird dynamic with sixes sometimes where they get tired of being the vigilant one, right? It's like, I'm always up on the wall looking for the White Walkers, and, I got to make sure that, horrible things aren't going to happen while everybody else is sitting around having a good time and relaxing. You know what? Screw it. I'm just going to veg out for a while. And so they kind of withdraw and they, relax, and then they start to panic after a while, right? And so really learning to manage this dynamic in a healthy way is important. So it's not either all the way on or all the way off, but appropriate relaxation, appropriate peacefulness that sixes need to develop.
Yeah, and it's hard. And that's why, because they repress this need for feeling peaceful, it comes up as a contradiction, as María was saying, describing. So they want to be responsible, but also they want to be lazy. They want to be the one who can relax. They want to be able to not to think about it for a while, but they think about it anyway. So, and they are not that able to rest, and they don't have it. They have a hard time finding a balance between these things.
Yeah.
Right. So I know we've mentioned a few strengths and challenges that sixes face. What are some other ones that come to mind for you?
Well, I think we want to make sure that we recognize the adaptive benefit of all of these strategies, right? And so the six, just as an example of this, right? Years ago I was on a team, and I was the leader of the team, and there was somebody on the team who was a preserving six, right? And she was really great. She had it down to an art of pointing out the negative, right? I mean, and you could see her, the wheels start to turn. Whenever we'd start talking about something, you could see the wheels start to turn, and then she would come out with, well, here's the problem with that, okay, and start, going down that. And you could see the team deflate, right? You could see them, like, literally people going, oh, man, here we go again. And as frustrating as it was for people, it was hugely valuable to me, right? Because my tendency is I just heard a new term recently, pronoia, right? Instead of paranoia, where you think everything is against you, pronoia is when you think that the universe has your back and is at your disposal and is supporting you and everything you do. Well, that's me, right? I mean, I tend to be like, yeah, we can do this, we can do that. And so I needed that person, to be able to turn to and say, hey, here's what I'm thinking. What's going to go wrong? And that allowed me to calibrate things, right, really well. So as frustrating as it might be, we want to make sure that we're taking, not just with sixes, we want to do this with everybody, but we want to make sure that we're really paying attention to the benefit of that. And I will say, I think that because we're, just real quickly here, one of the reasons that in the U.S. in particular, sixes get a bad rap is because we're kind of a three-ish culture, right? We're kind of this, can-do attitude, be all you can be sort of thing. And so the person who is pointing out, well, look, you can't be all you can be because this will go wrong and that'll go wrong, tends to get, I don't know, I think a bit more negativity than some of the other types might.
The interesting thing is that once you hear sixes out, and they point out everything they have to point out, everything they see, they're ready to go along with you and support the initiatives. So it's, again, counterintuitive. but it works.
The worst thing you can do is try to placate them and say, you know what, it'll be fine.
Yeah,
relax.
Tell them relax. Relax.
You've just made it exponentially worse, right? By saying that.
Yeah. Yeah, so some of the opportunities for growth or problems that sixes might have. We touched on pessimism. Sometimes they're too suspicious. They just are too almost wired to look underneath the surface and try to find the problems, and they might become too suspicious. They are sometimes indecisive, but the literature paints them or like portrays them like if they were not able to make decisions, and that's not the truth. I mean, they are able to make decisions, and sometimes it's the silly things that they struggle with, or I don't know, but it looks like they're just thinking about it from too many angles. Just maybe takes them longer.
Or there can be a second guessing, right, of deciding something, and then if they have too much time, they start to question that decision, and well, maybe that wasn't right, maybe I should do it this way, sort of thing. So a lot of times they're very good at making decisions and then remaking them and remaking them and remaking them.
Yes. Well,
yeah,
things change. And I would say that especially with transmitting sixes, they sometimes seem to be too combative, and that becomes a real issue for them.
Can you think of a recent client that you've used the awareness to action process to work through some of these issues?
Well, a classic thing that comes up. I mean, this pessimism one. Again, it's almost like every six that I've worked with over the years, you just run into the same issues over and over and over again, and you have the same and again, this happens with all the types, right? It's not just sixes, but you end up having these same conversations. With nines, you're telling them not to self-deprecate, right? With sixes, it's painting the picture of adding in the positivity, right? And so it's, okay, you're striving to feel secure, so you're pointing out all the negative things. What that does is makes you less secure because people tune you out because they're thinking, oh, here he goes again, just pointing out all the negative stuff, and we don't want to hear that. So that undermines their stability because of their security, because people aren't listening. So it becomes, okay, look, if you want to feel more secure, you have to get people to listen to you and take you seriously and not put you into a box where they just ignore you. So you have to point out positive things as well as negative things, ironically, in an attempt to become more secure in the long term. I can't tell you how many times I've had that conversation with sixes.
Well,
right?
And I mean, it's for me, it's proof that someone's seeing the whole picture. You know, when I talk to sevens or something like that, where it's like, oh, you're not seeing all the problems. I don't trust your perspective on this.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and the other thing that I usually work with, and again, especially with transmitting sixes, is how combative they might be. And they are trying to push harder so that they're heard. But that attitude makes people kind of not listen to them. So it's kind of changing the tone and being less assertive or aggressive about things, trying to state their point of view, can help them feel even more secure because people do listen to them. Otherwise, they just they just don't want to hear anything.
One of the other classic issues that you encounter in working with sixes is risk aversion. Okay, a tendency they can start to become paralyzed because all they see are the risks in each path that they choose. And they can fall into the trap of, well, if I just keep doing the same old thing, everything will be fine because it has always worked in the past. The analogy I often use is the Thanksgiving Day turkey, right? It's great to be a turkey on a turkey farm, until a few days before Thanksgiving, right? And, I've been getting fed, I've been getting all these other sort of things, and life is good, and it's going to continue this way until it's not. Well, it's the same way with risk aversion, is that just because playing it safe has worked in the past, we assume it will into the future. If I don't take a risk, then nothing bad will happen. The problem is that you have to take risk, right? Especially in the business world. If you're not, there's a saying, scared money doesn't make money, right? And so you have to make an effort to change. And I've seen sixes who are in danger of being fired because they resist change out of risk aversion. So again, the conversation you have around the awareness to action process is, I know that, taking risks feels scary and that it feels like it's undermining your security, but you're going to get fired if you don't learn to take appropriate risk. You'll never get fired for taking an appropriate risk, at least by a decent manager. But you will get fired for not changing, for not taking any risks at all. So you'll actually be more secure by learning to take appropriate risks. And again, that will bring sixes out of their shell because you're framing it in a language that they care about.
So another way you work with your clients is with the accelerators. María, what's the accelerator for 0.6 and how do you use it?
The accelerator is evidence, which it's a practice that we use so that it helps nurture the six's confidence, or everyone's actually. I mean, these are things that work for everyone, but in sixes more specifically, that's something that they truly benefit from working on. So sixes, because of this tendency to look at the negative things, they tend to forget all their accomplishments. They tend to forget all the skills they have. And so when they need to address a challenge, they are not sure if they will be able to do it or to do it well. So, and that makes them feel anxious about it and over-prepare sometimes because they are just thinking about all the things that could go wrong. Am I going to have the tools to do it? So nurturing confidence through making a list of the things that I've accomplished, all the times when I've done this in the past, or other similar things in the past and have worked well, or I've learned something. That is something that you could say, oh, it's so simple. Anybody could do it. But sixes just don't think about doing it. It's just not natural for them to do it. So that helps them remember what they're capable of, all the resources they have, and it helps build confidence.
I used to say all the time that confidence grows out of experience, right? Or grows out of success. So you achieve things and then you become confident. But I've come to realize that it's not just achievement, or success, it's awareness of achievement, right? That breeds confidence. And the problem that sixes and a lot of us have is that we do have all these things that we're good at, but we either forget about it or we don't think of it. So the task is very simple. I gave this to a guy this week. No, not this week because it's Monday. It must have been last week. The assignment was I said to him, look, write down everything you're good at and everything you've accomplished, and I want you to really be exhaustive here. You want a spelling bee in third grade, put it on the list. Okay. And so that's a good exercise because, again, it teaches the six, and we do this with nines a lot and some of the other types is, it reminds you, oh, yeah, I don't have as much reason as I thought to be nervous. And if they find that, okay, well, you know what, I'm going into this situation where I really don't have any experience, right? I've made a list of everything and nothing comes close to this. And then you can say, okay, well, at least we know where we are. What are the steps to close that gap? Okay, and again, you're taking the uncertainty out of it, you're taking the ambiguity out of it, and working from a position of evidence rather than emotion.
There's something related to that, where people delegate upwards because it's safer. You don't want to make a decision because you're not sure that it will be the best decision. So you have your manager make it for you because you make sure that it's what they want, It feels more secure, but that
what
manager...
do I need you for, right? Yeah.
Yes. Yes. So the temptation is, I've seen it there, but then the manager is thinking, not able to make you're not useful to me. So it's what feels secure in the short term does not always provide that security in the long term.
All right. Any final words for the people out there?
I feel like we've been saying about all the types during this series, but again, I think sixes are very often misunderstood in the literature, right? And the way you hear people talk about sixes, the more and more I hear people talking about the Enneagram in general, it seems, the more I hear these stereotypes and these undigested perspectives. And I hear that about sixes. You just keep hearing about, they're fearful, they'll never be this, they'll never be that, and so forth. No, I'm sorry. There's sixes. For example, I think the first George Bush was a type 6. I'm pretty certain of that. The guy was president of the United States. Okay, you don't get to be president. The guy was a World War II hero. He was head of the CIA. He did all these things, and he was a 6. And that goes against the literature very often. It goes against what people assume about the types. And so I think it's important not to underestimate sixes.
And that might be actually a topic for Thinking Well and Why or something like that, because how do you use it differently? You're still working with some form of a type, a stereotype.
Sure.
So what's the difference in that application? I don't think we should get into that now.
Right.
But maybe a future topic for another podcast. María José, any final words?
Not sure. We talked a lot about how the role they have in groups and teams, but I think they're really good at creating like some sort of glue, especially, some of them, but especially the navigating 6. But there's something about seeing the value of the group, the team, the community, that I would like to highlight in 6s.
I'll also point out, you made me think of something, María José. For people who work in organizations, there is a high proportion of executive assistants who are 6s, right? And these are the people who are the gatekeepers for the senior leaders, right? The CEO, the vice presidents, that sort of thing. They are the people who are keeping an eye on all the balls that are being juggled, protecting their schedules, guarding against anybody who's trying to get access to the leader. They are the pit bull, and very often they are power wielders in organizations, right? So again, this idea of the timid 6, et cetera, is not the case. These folks often wield a lot of influence in organizations. And if you want to be successful working in organizations, you have to understand that mindset of that person, and you have to, win those people over. Right. And you do that by being competent. You do that by being open and candid about things. And you do that by acknowledging their concerns and their responsibilities and thanking them for it and all that sort of stuff. But that's just a professional tip for all you people wanting to do corporate work out there. Get good at interacting with the type 6 executive assistants, because you will run into them.
You heard it here first, folks. Get good at what you do, and you'll be good at what you do.
Good at what you do.
So,
there you
go. Wisdom. So much wisdom in that statement. All right, folks, we'll talk to you in a couple weeks. Thanks for listening.